Joining us now on the Meyer Super Center guest line. This is GA years under John Beeline at the University of Michigan. Now an assistant coach at Ohio University. The pride of Concordia, our good buddy, the coach, Kyle Barlow. Find him on Twitter at KyleBarlow4. Coach Barlow, good morning to you, my friend. How are you, partner?
And first things foremost, I think I should say something nice about Michigan State Spartans basketball because apparently there's a cheap shot just shot across the bow last week.
Not at all. Not at all. It was not me. I took no offense to it. I thought it was actually pretty factual what you said.
Well, it's funny you bring up facts because in the last 30 years, Michigan State has had an All-NBA participant on the All-NBA team twice, and both those were Draymond Green in back-to-back years in the early 2010s. So, I think it wasn't meant to be an insult. I think it was more just a point I was trying to make, and I was trying to use an example. But you know what? The Michigan State has a great recruiting class coming in. They're probably a top 5 team next year, and they should have a great season.
Now, look how nice that was. You see, that's the thing.
Nice.
We talked about that the very next day, what you had said about high level, and we went through and we're like, okay, so let's go through like some of the NBA guys. And we're just kind of like, and for comparison's sake, because if you say anything about Michigan State, you got to say it about Michigan, because if not, everybody gets all in their feelings about it, and we don't want to upset anybody on a Tuesday morning at 7:30, God forbid. So, look, the same can really be said about Michigan. Like, who's the last really, like, impactful high-level player that they've had outside of C. Webb? That was a long time ago.
And I think the listener, Tim, shout out Tim, he said this wasn't a Michigan State thing. It was more about a cheap shot. But, I did look it up. And in that same 30 years, Michigan has had 8 guys on all-NBA teams. When you're talking Glenn Rice, Juwan Howard made one, C. Webb. So, you have a lot of you have more, I would say, but neither of them are extremely high, I think would be.
They're not Kentucky.
No doubt. You don't have the Devin Bookers on there and then the DeMarcus Cousins. You just don't have eras where you have guys making 4 or 5 straight All-NBA teams, and it's not even Duke, and it's not even close in Kansas. You could say the same thing about Kansas. So, but no, I think the point I can't even remember the point I was trying to make with that, but it was more so just a data point, more than anything.
Oh, man, hit me with a little Fizdale. Take that for data. Hey, by the way, Franz Wagner, 50th in scoring in the NBA in the 22-23 season. He shot 48.5% for the field, averaged 18.6 points, 4 rebounds, 3.5 assists. Franz was out there getting busy and getting buckets representing the Maize and Blues. So good for Franz, because some of these guys who have left early, you just kind of got to shake your head. I do want to ask you, I don't think that when we talked last week, I don't believe Hunter Dickinson had made his decision yet. I know it kind of feels like old news, and it feels like it was forever ago. But Hunter Dickinson picks Kansas, and then reveals that he was not making 6 figures in name, image, and likeness, aka pay for play, at the University of Michigan. Were you shocked by either of those?
I'm shocked he chose Kansas. I think that's a perfect situation for him. If you look the way Kansas has played in the past, they've had some really good big guys that they've been able to throw down to, and they run the 3-out, 2-in, high-low offense, and throw it to the corner of the backboard, and let the guy front you, go get it and dunk it. I think it's a great fit. Joel Embiid played that offense, and so I'm not surprised he chose Kansas. I think that's a wonderful fit for him. So obviously he did his homework. Now the corny bleep video, we can talk about that, which I'm sure you've already litigated as well. But the fact that he was making so little at Michigan compared to the numbers that I've heard been thrown around, especially in this cycle of the transfer portal NIL, that actually does really shock me.
There have been some numbers that have been floating around too, and it's hefty. I really I don't know how we're going to continue on at this pace, but something at some point is going to give. Like it's going to happen.
With recruiting in the MAC, how does the NIL discussion come up when you're recruiting?
It does. I mean, the how. I mean, usually it's not the kid. Usually it's some sort of handler, as we refer to him, who would be the one that's doing it. And now you can have an agent, but as long as they're an NIL agent, that's completely legal, like your marketing agent. The problem is a lot of these sports agents are also doubling as a marketing agent. So it's kind of a very gray line that everybody's tiptoeing back and forth, whether they're a marketing agent or a sports agent. So usually that's how it's coming up at our level and pretty much all throughout college basketball.
When you look at the, I saw a debate raging on because of the portal and everything else, and now that we've had a little bit of dust settle, I thought when, the free transfer rule, I thought that when it came out, it was going to hurt the mid-major more because we'd see guys that would explode for a season and then take off and go and try to test their mettle at the next level. We'd seen it before with graduate students, but never with a kind of like an open season, if you will, as far as free reign, NIL, recruiting, open transfer. Now that we've got a little bit of time and a little bit of exposure to this, were we right? I mean, is this now like kind of a serious problem facing the mid-major?
I think you were right, and I think there's definitely unintended consequences. Look, there's a guy in our league that was Player of the Year that hopped in the portal very late.
I'll say his name, Ray J. Dennis.
Yeah, I think I don't know if I can say it, but you can. But and there's another kid that we played in our region of Appalachia who's not in our league, who's a member of the Sun Belt, who just hopped in the portal last week, who averaged 20 points a game, a point guard as well. And like those guys are, being dangled a carrot of a lot of money, a lot more than Hunter Dickinson supposedly made at Michigan. And so there's where you see what you were talking about. You're absolutely right. One of the unintended consequences, and speaking in general about recruiting in the portal, because I don't think I can talk specific, but speaking in general, the 7, 8, 9, 10, 11th player on a high major roster is still making a lot of money. So it's been harder for the mid-majors to get some of those guys who, maybe basically what I'm trying to say is guys transfer high major to high major now because the money's way more enticing, even being a guy who doesn't have many stats. Because if you're a high major, you're still trying to fill 13 scholarships. Where in the past, everything was pretty much level playing field because you didn't have extra NIL to offer. So you could have a guy like, for example, Trayshawn Fletcher at Toledo, who averaged 6 points a game at Colorado and bet on himself so he could make a lot more money as a pro and went to Toledo. And that bet paid off because he was Player of the Year. Now, I don't think that same caliber of player is going down to mid-major. I think he's going another high major because he can make a lot of money.
Very, very strange era of collegiate sports that we are following. And for a long time, people would banter back, oh, the kids, they play for the love of the game, this, that, and the third, and they want to argue about how college is better than pro. I'm like, you can like one more than the other. I don't care what you like. It's completely up to you. But I don't know, like the whole love of the game argument, I feel like that can kind of like take a back seat now because we're hearing more and more about what some of the incentives are. You can't knock somebody. I mean, if somebody's knocking on your door offering you 6 figures, I can't, say, don't go do it and stay with my team. We need you. Like, what? That's ridiculous. But at the same time, I do think that there needs to be some sort of rule/salary cap put in place so this isn't just the haves having more and the have-nots having less. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. There's got to be some sort of equity here.
I was talking with somebody who's in the NBA now, and they said, I don't know how you do it, man. I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, at least the NBA, we have a salary cap, and we have contract slots in the draft, and we have max deals for a hometown player. Like, we have rules. He's like, you guys don't have any rules.
There's no rules.
It's so arbitrary.
He's just making it up on the fly. Have you been watching a lot of the NBA playoffs thus far?
I saw last night that the Lakers and Golden State was the most watched semifinals in a long time. I don't know if it was in history, but it's in a long, long time. And I tried my hardest to stay up every single night and watch that series because I thought it was fascinating. You have a dynasty of old versus a one-man dynasty in LeBron because he basically brings conference championships and NBA Finals appearances to every team he's ever played for, if not NBA championships. And then versus the big bad Warriors, right? The dynasty of the 2010s creeping into the 2020s, won one last year as well. So I thought that series was so fascinating. So, yeah, I've been watching a lot of that. and then I watch Jokic just because of the pure mastery of the game. Those are the two biggest series I've been watching, man, and just the fascinating storylines with all.
Now, when you see Golden State, I mean, they need a wing defender bad. They need the guy that Klay Thompson used to be. And we can't expect him to be what he was because, multiple back-to-back major surgeries and injuries. Like, we can't expect him to be, an all defensive team, sort of caliber kind of player. But they're going to have to change something. What, in your opinion, I don't think they can move off of Draymond Green. I don't think Draymond Green actually wants to leave. I know that people had Lakers rumors and everything else during the season. I don't think that they move off of Draymond. But they definitely need to do something. If you had Steph, Klay, Draymond, Wiggins, and Poole, but you could only keep 3, who would you keep?
Draymond and Wiggins, or Steph, Klay, and Draymond. But I don't think Wiggins is going anywhere because he is that wing defender that you're talking about. But they've just been so elite in the past when they've had, a guy like him and Andre Iguodala and Klay Thompson as an elite defender. But, I would really look at the Kuminga pool because I think both of those guys would still have value when it comes to trades. I don't even know if Draymond has a ton of value when it comes to trades, only because he is an elite player in Golden State and how they want to do it. His IQ is off the chain, or through the roof. So I think you got to look at Kuminga and Poole and making some sort of package because I don't think that any rest of those guys are going to go anywhere. And if you're the GM, if you're the owner, are you the guy that's going to want to move off Steph Curry? Like, no, you're not doing that. Like,
no, you're keeping him.
Franchise. Yeah. So, what really happened with the Warriors is fascinating because they did get injured for 2 years, where Klay didn't play basically. Draymond, Steph had everybody had these little injuries, and they ended up getting the number 2 pick in the draft, and they ended up getting another lottery pick, and then I think they got one more lottery pick, maybe via trade in that time period. And it looks like they struck out on all 3 when it comes to Kuminga, Wiseman, and Moody. So it's like it's a very hard thing to do in the NBA, as Pistons fans know, to rebuild, right? Because you have to be really good. You have to hit. Look at the 76ers. Out of all their number 1 picks and top 3 picks they had, the only one worth a bleep is Joel Embiid. And so it's very hard to build a team in the NBA. You know what's even more hard, Bellino? Trying to do it and sustain a dynasty. And the Warriors almost did it, but they just could not let Wiseman play through his mistakes. That's why you saw the Pistons trade for him. They basically just picked up their contract because Golden State's luxury tax was through the roof, and they're like, we can't play this guy enough for him to develop. And he's slotted to make, he's got his rookie extension looming. So it's so interesting when you look at Golden State. They tried to do something that's probably never been done before in the history of the NBA.
Yeah, rebuilding on the fly while you're still a contender is something. They saw a wing defender, and on the grocery list, they got to get some sort of interior scoring at some point. Tomorrow night will be the tip-off of the Western Conference Finals, Game 1, Nuggets-Lakers. Gut feeling here. I mean, Anthony Davis, all the – pardon me?
I thought tonight was tip-off.
Oh, yeah, today's Tuesday. My fault. Did I say tomorrow night? No, it's tonight. Yeah. Tonight it tips off. My bad. 8:30 on ESPN. Anthony Davis, all eyes on the brow. Does he have an answer for Nikola Jokic? Can Denver get over the hump and get to the finals? Gut feeling.
I do believe that the Lakers can match up because if there's anybody, it's the Brow who can do it. You saw what he did with Draymond running a similar offense with that 5-out type style. But even Draymond said on his podcast, I thought it was very. I thought he nailed it when he said, "When you play Denver, you're not trying to stop Jokic. You're trying to stop everybody else." And if you look, the Suns, what did my man have? He had 50 and 13 assists in a loss to the Suns. So it's like, you got to stop everybody else, man. Jokic is going to be Jokic. At least you have the Brow to defend him, and he's probably the best defender in his position in the NBA. So you're going to say, hey, you guys play one-on-one the entire game. What you can't have is the back cuts, the slips, Jokic throwing behind his head, between the legs, a little bounce pass. You can't have those. And since he's on the perimeter so much, now you worry about Anthony Davis not being around the rim to shot block, which has been one of his key things he's been doing in this playoffs. So now you need somebody like Vanderbilt to step up. Like, I thought he took a step back the last series against Golden State, but you need someone like him to protect the rim like he's shown that he can while being a guard wing defender.
Heat Celtics, who do you like in that series?
I do like the Celtics. I think they're more talented. What a fascinating series, because the Heat have been less talented. And Wrigley even, my dog Wrigley, he even agrees with me. The Heat have been the less talented team throughout every series that they've played so far, right? I mean, they were, one game of not making the playoffs? So I like the Celtics. Props to Joe Mazzulla. I think he was taking a lot of heat in the, pun intended, in the last series after being down 3-2 because, being a rookie coach and everybody's saying he wasn't making adjustments. But, when you have a guy, when your best player go for 50 and just start making shots, that's all the adjustments you need, right?
That's the adjustment. Now you write that down at halftime. Here's the deal. Jason, go crazy, and then we'll all just kind of hang out and try to defend a little bit. Last one here for you. What kind of epic failure was that from Joel Embiid and James Harden? The process is officially a failure.
Stan Van Gundy went on the radio when he was the GM and head coach of the Pistons, and it was against he was talking with Mike Valeni, and I remember I loved it because I thought Stan Van owned Valeni in that segment, and it was great to see because everybody thinks that Valeni is has some voice of God within this radio community, but Stan Van Gundy said because Valeni's like, you guys are making trades, they're tanking, they're getting high-end talent, and that's a more sustainable model. And Stan Van Gundy's like, that may be so. They're getting more talent, but at some point, that talent has to turn into winning. And he's like, we haven't seen it win yet. And they can stack. Like, think about some of those draft picks, Bellino. You had Nerlens Noel in there. You had the kid from Washington with a shoulder who nobody even heard of.
Markelle Fultz. You had Jahlil Okafor.
You know who was picked before Jalen Tatum in that draft? Markelle Fultz. Mm-hmm. Like, think about that. Think about that process. And then they finally hit on 1 out of 5. I mean, Ben Simmons was a consensus number 1 pick, but the dude don't even want to shoot layups anymore. He don't even want to play the game anymore.
No, he just wants to hang out and be petty on Instagram.
The process, and I think that's a fair grade. You know what? I give it a D- because at least they've made won conference finals and they've advanced in playoff series a couple times. So
I give it
a D-.
I give it an F-, because the basketball gods do not approve of tanking, my friend. He is the coach, Kyle Barlow. Find him on Twitter, Kyle Barlow4. Send your kids' recruiting tapes there. Coach Barlow, as always, my friend, thanks so much for the time this morning. Have a great day.